December 31st, 1999, New Year's Eve. While the rest of Las Vegas counts down to a new millennium, Richard Marcus places his final bet as a professional casino cheat, closing out a career that started 25 years earlier with nothing. In that quarter century, he cost casinos an estimated $30 million. The Nevada Gaming Control Board watched him for over a decade. Federal investigators took an interest. He was banned from casino floors on multiple continents. And the number that breaks the math? 0. 0 convictions. 0 criminal charges. 0 nights in a cell. Everyone in the industry knew what he was doing. Nobody could prove it. Marcus doesn't call that luck. He calls it the design. To understand how a system built entirely to catch cheats let one operate in plain sight for 25 years, you have to go back to where none of this existed. A teenager at a racetrack window holding more money than he'd ever seen, with no idea what it was about to cost him. The figure is consistent across the accounts Marcus has given, roughly $100,000 won at the horse races as a teenager. It wasn't the product of years of study or a professional system. It was luck, arriving all at once for a young man from New York with no gambling career and no plan for what comes after winning big. Most people who land a windfall that size do the ordinary thing. They walk away from gambling for good, richer and wiser. Marcus didn't. What happened next is where the story turns. On his 18th birthday, by his own telling, Marcus lost the entire sum. Not most of it, all of it. There is no independently verified account of that specific day, no surviving betting slip, no third-party record. This detail rests entirely on Marcus's own retelling, and no outside source has confirmed the exact circumstances of the loss. What is documented is the aftermath: a young man with no money, no home, and an increasingly specific grievance against the industry he now blamed for his ruin. Marcus has consistently framed that loss, in retrospect, as the origin of a grievance against the industry rather than a lesson about his own gambling, a framing the record can confirm he holds, though not one it can independently verify as his true state of mind at 18. Ask the obvious question, and the record can't fully answer it: was the anger real in the moment, or is it a story he built afterward to make sense of what came next? What isn't in dispute is what came immediately after. Before any of that grievance could turn into a plan, he had nowhere left to sleep. The documented detail is specific enough to matter. Marcus slept under a bridge, using a duffel bag as a pillow. It's a small, unglamorous fact, and it's the one he keeps returning to when asked where the real story begins. Homeless, far from home, with no dealer's license, no bankroll, and no casino willing to hire a stranger off the street. His response, according to his own account, wasn't to walk away from the industry that broke him. It was to get inside it. Marcus has described acquiring clothing without paying for it to present himself as employable, then talking his way into a dealer school despite having no formal standing to attend. Here's what that plan still had to survive. A dealer school doesn't take a homeless teenager on his word, and a casino doesn't hire a stranger without a story that holds up. Whether it held up through skill, luck, or simple persistence isn't something the record settles. What is confirmed is that it held. This is the detail that separates his account from a standard rags to riches arc. He didn't simply want back in as a player. He wanted to understand the machine from the inside. How a table operates, how a shift runs, how a pit boss reads a room before he ever touched a chip as a cheat. The instinct described is procedural, not emotional. Learn the system's blind spots before exploiting them. Whether the anger came first and the strategy second, or the two developed together, isn't something the record settles cleanly. Either Marcus's own retellings blend motive and method into a single narrative rather than separating them. What is confirmed is the outcome. He completed dealer training, he He was hired as a baccarat dealer at the Four Queens Casino in Las Vegas. The same duffel bag that had been a pillow under a bridge belonged, now, to a man with a Las Vegas casino badge. The man the casino industry would spend 2 decades failing to convict walked onto his first casino floor wearing its own uniform. A baccarat table at the Four Queens is not, on paper, a place where criminal partnerships form. It's a workstation with strict rules, camera coverage overhead, and a pit boss watching every hand. Joe Klassen, a professional casino cheat known for testing new, inexperienced dealers, noticed Marcus anyway. New dealers were his preferred targets. Easier to read, easier to pressure, more likely to bend a rule under the right offer. Where other dealers, Klassen tested, might break a rule once and refuse to repeat it, Marcus, by his own account, treated the proposition as a technical opportunity rather than a moral risk. The two men, later joined by 2 more associates, built something closer to an operating unit than a friendship. It's worth being precise about what this required of Marcus at this stage. Not table skill as a gambler, not disguise, not charm on the customer side of the felt, but a willingness to use his legitimate position as an employee to manipulate the game from behind the table itself. Dealer collusion of this kind depends on a specific blind spot in casino security: the assumption that the threat originates from the player's side of the table, not the house's own staff. Surveillance systems of that era were built to watch bettors, not to cross-reference a dealer's shuffle pattern against statistical odds. Every camera in the room was pointed the wrong way at what was actually happening. That asymmetry, rust extended inward, suspicion extended outward, is what Klassen had spent years learning to exploit. Marcus, on his first real test behind the table, learned it in a single shift. The mechanics were not complicated. Klassen and Marcus arranged to pre-stack the shoe. The container holding cards to be dealt, and Marcus, when his turn came, performed what looked like a standard shuffle while leaving the arranged sequence intact. To a pit boss a few feet away, it looked like a dealer doing his job.
To
Klassen and his associates, seated at the table, it was a known run of cards about to be dealt, turning a game of chance into something closer to a scripted outcome. The first run of this scheme reportedly earned the group around $21,000, split among the team, with Marcus taking a percentage for his role as the inside man.
As the camera pulls back,
set against the tens of millions later attributed to his career, that first $21,000 is almost nothing. But it's the number that mattered most, because it was the first proof the method worked at all. $21,000 pulled from a single baccarat table through a fake shuffle is not on its own historically remarkable. Dealer and player collusion has existed for as long as casinos have employed dealers. What makes this specific run significant is what it proved to Marcus, not what it paid him. It proved that a system built around vigilance toward the player's side of the table had a structural weak point on the house's own side. It proved money could move from the casino to cheat without triggering the response mechanisms the casino had spent years building. And it proved, to a man who had slept under a bridge less than a year earlier, that the system he blamed for his ruin could be made to pay him back. The team worked together for more than a decade, using variations of this and related methods, moving between casinos in multiple cities. It had made the team real money. But a shoe can only be rigged from behind a table. Marcus happened to be dealing with a ceiling built into the method itself. It had not yet made Marcus a name that the surveillance industry would spend years trying to explain. That would take a different kind of exploit, one that didn't need him behind the table at all. By the time Marcus began developing what would become his signature exploit, he had moved from card mechanics to something that operated in full view of casino surveillance rather than around it. The target was roulette. The exploit lived entirely in a gap of distance, a roulette table runs long, and a dealer positioned at one end can be 1.5 meters or more from a player at the other. Far enough that resolving whether a chip stack reads as $5 or $5,000 requires walking the table's length and looking down at an angle no dealer ever bothered to take. Marcus is reported to have tested the concept first at a smaller scale, in a downtown Las Vegas casino, sliding a modest chip beneath a lower value one to see whether a dealer would register the difference. The dealer did not. That result, confirmed, repeatable, unremarkable looking on camera, became the foundation for what Marcus would later call his best cheating strategy. Scaled up, the sequence ran in reverse depending on the outcome. On a winning number, Marcus revealed the full stack, asked staff to check the surveillance footage to confirm the bet had been placed before the ball landed, and collected a payout reported as high as roughly $10,010. On a losing number, an accomplice, a distraction timed to the second, bought Marcus the brief window needed to swap the stack for 2 low-value chips before anyone looked closely, capping the loss at a fraction of what had been risked. The move took its name from Savannah, a Las Vegas performer reported to have worked as one of the distraction accomplices central to executing it. What made the exploit dangerous to the industry wasn't its complexity. It was the absence of it. Marcus has said the surveillance and security world reacted with disbelief once the method became public, precisely because the mechanism required no hidden electronics, no marked cards, no collusion with casino staff, only precise timing, a dealer's fixed vantage point, and a length of table long enough to hide roughly 6 inches of angle. Reported earnings attributed to the Savannah move alone vary sharply by source, ranging from figures around $5 million to numbers folded into broader lifetime totals cited between $20 million and $36 million. A spread wide enough that no single figure here should be treated as a settled fact. What isn't disputed is the operational result. For years, casinos suspected something was happening at their roulette tables and could not identify what. Here is the detail that turns this from a clever chip trick into a genuine inversion of casino logic. The same surveillance footage installed to catch cheats is the footage Marcus used to clear himself, every time a winning bet was questioned. Casino security systems operate on a specific assumption that recorded video is a neutral, incorruptible record, and that anyone requesting a review of it is doing so because they have nothing to hide. Marcus's method depended entirely on that assumption holding. When a winning bet paid out and a floor supervisor hesitated over the size of the wager, Marcus would encourage staff to check the tape. The floor supervisor would call it in. Someone would pull the footage. And the footage would show, accurately, a large bet placed before the outcome was decided. Because by that point in the sequence, the concealed chip actually was there, exposed and legitimate on camera. The recording wasn't doctored, it was simply incomplete, capturing a moment engineered earlier to survive exactly this kind of scrutiny. This is the institutional question the case forces into the open. If a casino's entire security architecture treats its own footage as final proof, what happens when a bettor's method is specifically designed to produce footage that looks clean? Las Vegas security teams, by Marcus's own account, spent years suspecting some form of electronic interference, a hidden device influencing where the ball would land beat. Because the alternative explanation, that a low-tech chip placement was defeating a multi-million-dollar surveillance apparatus, seemed too simple to be believed. That underestimation, more than any technical sophistication on Marcus's part, is what allowed the exploit to run as long as it did, chasing a non-existent piece of electronics while the real method sat in plain sight. Confidence in the system's own footage wasn't a vulnerability anyone had trained staff to look for. For a period of years, it was the widest open gap in casino table security. No single incident is documented as the moment the exploit collapsed. If the surveillance apparatus was this extensive, this well-funded, this integral to how a casino operates, how does a single method run for years without producing an arrest? The record doesn't answer that with a raid or a courtroom moment. It answers it with accumulation. Marcus has said scrutiny from the Nevada Gaming Control Board, along with reported interest from federal investigators, intensified as the Savannah move's success rate became impossible for security departments to ignore, even without an explanation for how it worked. Bans followed at individual properties, one at a time, narrowing the list of casinos where the team could still operate without immediately drawing a pit boss's attention. None of this produced a criminal charge. Marcus has stated plainly that he was never convicted of a casino cheating offense across his entire career, and no public record contradicts that claim. What changed was the calculation, not the law closing in. A cheat who has already banked millions has less to gain from one more run and considerably more to lose if a surveillance department finally isolates the pattern. Marcus has described his own exit from the game less as a forced retreat and more as a decision made from a position of leverage. Walk away while the reputation is still one of mystery rather than capture. The absence of an arrest is, in its own way, as significant to this case as any single scheme he ran. It means the record can't end with a verdict, a sentence, or a courtroom scene. It ends instead with a choice, made by the one person who had spent 25 years studying exactly how far a casino's evidence could reach and exactly where it stopped. Marcus's own account of his post-cheating years centers on two milestones: writing books that laid out his methods in detail, including American Roulette and The Great Casino Heist, and becoming, within the same industry that once hunted him, a paid consultant on table game protection. The reversal is procedural, not sentimental. Casinos that once spent years trying to identify his methods now pay to have them explained directly. Marcus has said the moment he considers most significant from this chapter of his life wasn't a specific score or a specific escape from suspicion. It was presenting a Lifetime Achievement Award for game protection to Dirk Boss, a surveillance executive Marcus has described as one of the people most likely, at the height of his career, to have wanted him caught. Standing on a stage with that history between them isn't something either side's earlier position would have predicted. What the case leaves unresolved isn't the ending. The ending is documented, public, and confirmed by Marcus himself in interviews and his own writing. What remains open is the gap this whole story started with, the distance between certainty and evidence. For 25 years, everyone in the business knew what Marcus was doing, and no one could prove it. The blind spot he found, the one no camera was ever built to see past, has never been publicly confirmed as closed. It may simply have been renamed.